The Repercussions of Racism on American Society by Hariharan Jayakumar, Class Period 2. John Steinbeck has touched on many racial ideologies in his book of Mice and Men. He includes many racist quotes and actions to portray the mistreatment of blacks in the early 1900s. Some instances are, "Why ain't you wanted?" Lenny asked. "'Cause I'm black," from page 68. "Listen, nigger," she said. "You know what I can do if you open your trap?" from page 80. "And this is just a nigger talking, and a busted back nigger, so it don't mean nothing, see?" from page 71. As we can see, Steinbeck has included a lot of racist comments in his book, and they pretty much all portray the same thing. Blacks were heavily discriminated at the time, and many white people were utter douchebags. But to really understand the full meaning of these racist quotes, we need to dive back deep in time. Racism is an act that has been occurring for many centuries in America. Racism has existed even as far back as the Egyptians who lived from 1550 to 1175 BCE. In America, racism first started as slavery. Jamestown was one of the first towns to implement slavery, and it slowly spread to the South. As decades passed, slaves had had enough, and many attempted to escape, but that only led to more punishment. These slaves were generally characterized by brutality, degradation, and inhumanity. Whippings, executions, and rapes were commonplace. Additionally, these slaves didn't get as many educational opportunities as white people, and thus, many were illiterate. To make matters worse, medical care was very limited. This horrible mistreatment was all due to racism and white people's thought of superiority over black people. Slaves and abolitionists believed that the abolition of slavery would put an end to this harsh treatment to blacks. However, it only fueled the hate that whites in the South already had against black people, and it drove them to discriminate against these people even more. Once the Emancipation Proclamation and Civil War passed, these black people were finally free from the treacherous hands of slavery. However, they were far from free of the handcuffs of racism. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, things weren't much better for these people. There were even laws passed to discriminate against these people, such as black codes, which limit black rights by using the loopholes and in the end segregate them from the whites. They also implemented many policies in order to stop black people from voting, such as requiring poll taxes and literacy tests. Many states even went to extreme heights just to discriminate these poor people. For example, in 1914, Louisiana required separate entrances for blacks and whites. In 1915, Oklahoma segregated telephone booths, and later on, Texas prohibited integrated boxing matches. Several laws like these were made and put into action in the years to follow. These people were even segregated in day-to-day life tasks, such as in water fountains, bathrooms, public transport, and much more. They received no respect and were often looked down upon. To make things worse, employers would not even consider hiring a black person, and if they did, then they would be paid significantly less. White people would often insult them like Curly's wife did in "Listen, nigger," she said. "You know what I can do to you if you open your trap?" from page 80. These insults only put blacks down and made it impossible for them to advance forward in society. In the end, things only got worse for them, and they only got discriminated even more. Unfortunately, insults like these were acceptable to be said by white people to black people at the time. People hoped that as time passed and as new laws such as the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and influential speeches such as the "I Have a Dream" speech would bring equality to black Americans. However, even after all that, there are still some slight sparkles of racism here and there. Racism has not been as hot of a topic as it was in the early 1900s compared to the late 1900s, but recently it is becoming very prevalent once again. For example, in 1995, only 15% of whites and 51% of blacks believed the justice system was biased against blacks. In 2015, 44% of whites and 77% of blacks believed the justice system was biased against blacks. That's about a 450% increase. Racial profiling against blacks in big retail stores is also prevalent. For example, an investigation that CBC Marketplace did on racial profiling showed that employees kept a closer eye on black people compared to white people because they are more likely to shoplift. They sent two shoppers, white and black. The white male was never questioned, while the black male was questioned up to 7 times in certain stores. They tested this out in many big-name stores such as Best Buy, and they all showed signs of racial profiling against black people. This is just one of the countless examples of racism that still linger in our society today. As a result, while racism is much less of a problem today compared to 1900s, there is still some racism here and there. This is why we must explore the roots of racism in order to be able to fully understand the meaning of Steinbeck's novel. Now that we have a better understanding of racism in the 1930s, we can better understand how it was acceptable at the time for Curly's wife, a white woman who was also the wife of the owner's son, had superiority over Crooks, a black man. Having this background knowledge is crucial today because in today's society, even racial profiling in stores is considered outrageously racist, and as a result, the racism portrayed in the book seems out of the world in today's standards. This is why background knowledge about the social situation during the time in which the book is based on is essential to be able to fully understand the novel. From researching about the time period, we are able to see that during that time period, white women had power over black men. This superiority that white women possess is what allowed Curly's wife to express negative behavior and make the racist comments that she made towards Crooks. This behavior around Crooks was actually quite normal and acceptable then. Sometimes black people tried to rebel, such as when Crooks states, "You got no rights coming in a colored man's room. You got no rights messing around in here at all," from page 80. However, such rebellion only led to white people making additional racist comments and putting black people back in their place. When first reading this book, Curly's wife seems like a racist comeback who wants attention. But after doing research, we are able to see how she was just an average white woman, grieving over not being able to achieve something that she wanted due to horrible gender restrictions that existed during that time period. This change in perception conveys how more knowledge of the social situations at the time in which a book is based on helps us better understand and even accept some behavior and comments that may seem unacceptable in society. We are able to better understand the meaning behind the racist language and decipher Steinbeck's motive behind portraying Curly's wife as arrogant and racist and characterizing Crooks as extremely humble and modest. For example, Steinbeck included Curly's wife's racist comment to emphasize how rude and mean white people were against black people, and to portray the unacceptable situations that existed within society at the time. He included Crooks backing off to show how that was the only option he had, and how his options were limited due to racism. Overall, background knowledge about the time period which Of Mice and Men is based upon changes readers' perception by giving them more insight into the normal and acceptable behavior and social situations during the time. This helps them to better understand and interpret hidden messages and motives behind characters' actions, behaviors, and comments in the novel. In the end, when we understand these motives about such powerful issues like racism, we are not only able to appreciate the novel even more, but are also able to better appreciate our lives. Thank you.